The first duty of government is to protect our rights.
It's our job to maintain the proper role of government in what we were tasked to do.
If you really want to doge, this is how you doge. You don't vote for bad legislation that expands government. Thank you.
Now we're talking about taxpayer money, and we're talking about accountability. It is their money. This isn't a government program we're actually spending on. We're actually giving it back to the people of Idaho.
There's other options for making our ballots more secure, such as using watermarks or putting holograms on the ballots.
And I think that that's what we need to look at more, is trying to get back to what we used to be, where our churches and our families took care of each other instead of relying on the state.
I asked the question rhetorically, if we gave them another $1 billion, they wouldn't be happy. Well, we've given them $2 more billion, and it's not enough.
We need to start making Idaho first. We need to start making America first.
The other states like Texas and Florida have enacted similar laws to address illegal immigration, both locally and in their communities. And Idaho has the right to protect itself when the federal government has failed to do that.
COVID presented us with quite the enigma. We didn't really know what it was or what to do, but that is no excuse to violate the rights of the citizens of the state of Idaho.
Say vote no on this and let the teachers teach and quit bringing in coaches to teach the teachers to teach, and let's get education going again in Idaho.
I don't know what's coming after this current administration for the feds, and we need this law because our federal laws on immigration have failed.
Mr. President, I think it's incumbent upon us to allow parents to use their hard-earned dollars to provide what's best for their children.
If I was looking at a business and I was looking at these figures, there would be heads rolling because this is unsustainable.
My concern is that the resilience of Idahoans who believe in self-reliance and self-responsibility will be eroded.
We need to be protecting our First Amendment rights, not inventing ways to slowly chip away at them.
The First Amendment and our freedom of religion, freedom of speech are our first liberties. They are so important. We don't have the rest without them.
Yeah, watch it.
Well. Good morning, folks. Good morning. Welcome back to Idaho Signal. I am just getting myself situated here. And it's Thursday. It's March 12th, folks. It's 2026. We are still going through it. If we have time at the end of the program, we're going to show you how many bills have been signed by the governor so far, and what the bill count is compared to the previous sessions and so forth. But we've got a packed show here today, so let's get to it. Again, if I haven't said, my name is Matt Edwards. It's so thrilled you're here all the time. The loyal viewers that are out there, it's so great to have you here. And I sometimes forget that there are also folks out there who are maybe watching for the first time. They maybe have just heard about the program and they're here. And so I kind of want to give you a little bit of breakdown of what we're analyzing here, because you hear it all the time. The system is broken. It's broken. The system is broken. That's the reason everyday people are hurting, or they're stagnant in their lives as they work harder and harder. But folks, the system isn't broken. It's rigged. For 40, 60, maybe even 100 years, we've been sold this bill of goods about American government practices that are supposed to make life better, freer, more prosperous. We are now 250 years into this experiment, and the system that worked for the first 150, 175 years looks nothing like what we have today. Just look around you. Has society really improved for the average everyday person in the last 50 years? I mean, the only advancements we see, the smartphones in our pockets, the electric cars that are now zipping by, the medical tech that is actually saving lives and allowing us to live longer. Most of this all comes from the private sector, from the innovators and the entrepreneurs who risk it all in spite of the bureaucrats, not because of them. And lately, everything the government touches or controls, It's a disaster for the common man, seemingly designed to keep you dependent and broke and under the thumb while enriching the elite few who sit at the top. It's not incompetence. It's intentional. The system is rigged, and it's time we stop pretending otherwise. Let's start with healthcare. This is this bloated beast where the insurance industry has us all by the throat. You've got this ridiculous setup. Just imagine, this is the setup we have, where you shell out thousands and thousands of dollars a month in premiums to cover your family. Money that you could use directly for your family, for your savings or your dreams or college, whatever. All of that just for the privilege of coverage. Then when you actually need it, you're hit with copays for every office visit, for every treatment. And don't forget the deductible. Fork over another $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 or more out of pocket before the insurance company decides to kick in a dime. It's like paying for a car that only starts after you've pushed it uphill for about a mile. And we accept this as normal. We have our older parents scolding us for not having health insurance if you don't have it, regardless of the costs. Oh, it's the most important thing. And so who's really winning? Well, the hospitals, the insurance companies, and now the states. We find out that the states are colluding with hospitals to grift billions of dollars from the feds through Medicare and Medicaid. You know, those are your tax dollars. They do it through inflated billing, unnecessary taxing procedures, and a web of regulations that make competition impossible. It's rigged to keep you sick and paying, not healthy and free. Then, of course, the big elephant in the room, the immigration policies, which is a masterclass in enforcement theater. The government tells companies that they must collect proof of legal work status, social security numbers, I-9 forms, a whole shebang, all of it. And then it all just gets stuffed into a drawer without verification. That's the game. And the result, of course, millions of illegals flooding the workforce, depressing wages for legal Americans, driving up housing and school costs, and straining every social service we pay for. But the agricultural barons, the construction moguls, the hospitality tycoons, well, they get cheap labor, no questions asked, while insisting, oh, we don't hire illegals. We have to go through all these visa programs, even as they fight tooth and nail against real enforcement. I'm telling you, it's rigged to benefit the powerful at the expense of the working class, turning our borders into a joke and our communities into pressure cookers. The security policies. Don't get me started on the TSA circus that's still going on at the airports. You show up with a proper ID for a 45-minute domestic flight between states, and suddenly you're treated like one of the usual suspects. You get facial scans, body pat-downs, your belongings rifled through like you're smuggling dirty bombs, all in the name of safety after 9/11. But over 2 decades later, it's just theater. It's ineffective, it's evasive, and it's a massive jobs program for bureaucrats. Meanwhile, the real threats slip by through the porous borders, right? Or they used to. But heaven forbid you forget to take off your boots as you go through security. Oh my God. Stop that guy. It's rigged to erode your privacy and dignity. It's conditioning us to accept surveillance as normal, while the government expands its control over every move you make. And that's the thing. You see this all as just normal. And then look at the way we conduct wars. For decades, we've been embedding troops in far-flung hellholes, not to win quick, decisive victories, but to drag it out for generations. Iraq, Afghanistan, now endless proxy fights, Ukraine and Russia. Who benefits? Not the soldiers coming home in body bags or with PTSD. Not the taxpayers footing the trillions of dollars, all going to the military-industrial complex. Defense contractors like Lockheed and Raytheon. Eisenhower warned us about all of this in the 50s, but here we are, still playing global cop. It's all rigged, folks, for perpetual conflict, not peace or prosperity. Now, for me, the jury is still out on what's going on in Iran, but I'll say this. I've never seen the U.S. military show this amount of power and strength in my lifetime. This is definitely a commander-in-chief that is not like the others. So we'll see how this all plays out. We'll see if this is the change that we need. Then, of course, there's taxes, the granddaddy of all the rigs, right? Property taxes that never end. A senior couple pays off their mortgage after 30 years of of saving and sweating, only to get hit with a $2,000, $3,000, $5,000 yearly bill just to keep their home. It's like renting from the government forever. And the income tax, you work the first 3 or 4 months of the year just to pay the government before a penny even hits your pocket. And then it's taxed again. When you spend it all on and when you get the money, you spend it on sales tax, gas tax, you name it. You layer on estate taxes that punish family for passing on what they've built. And it's a system designed to keep you grinding, to keep you moving, chasing it, not thriving. But the elite, they get to hide everything in loopholes, offshore accounts, and you fit the bill for their pet projects, like the public school system. The public school system, don't get me wrong, folks, it's working exactly as intended. Stick with me here. We know it's a rigged indoctrination factory. Standardized testing that lowers the bar every few years just so that we can make sure the kids are graduating. We can't have those numbers tanking, right? Because we need those kids. We're stuffing the kids' heads with this woke garbage, gender fluidity, critical race theory, climate hysteria designed to turn independent thinkers into compliant activists. National Day, walk out of school. We're walking out of school today. Our teacher said we're going to walk out and protest. And all this under the guise of historic investments in education, throwing billions more at a system that's, remember, it's not failing, folks. It's succeeding at its real goal, which is dumbing down generations to keep them dependent upon government. Teachers' unions get fat, administrators build empires. But Johnny can't read or do math without AI. It's rigged to control minds, not educate them. You see what I mean? The system isn't broken. It's all rigged for evil purposes. And you don't have to stop there. I mean, everything, high processed foods that are killing us slowly, right? Loaded with chemicals. You got big ad in the food giants pushing all this stuff with FDA approval, having been grown under auspicious circumstances. You got heart disease, obesity, diabetes skyrocketing. But try suggesting non-pharmaceutical remedies like natural diets or supplements, and they get villainized as quackery because they don't line big pharma's pockets. No, don't go out in the sun and get vitamin D. Stay indoors. You got statins and pills for everyone. Side effects be damned. The opioid crisis, big pharma pushed it. Government looked the other way, and now we're left with the wreckage. The energy policy. It's all rigged right now to subsidize green boondoggles for cronies, while reliable sources like coal and nuclear get regulated to death. Then you got housing, the zoning laws, environmental red tape that keeps the supply low, prices high. It all benefits developers with connections and the constructions with the illegal workers. All of this is the establishment's plan, folks. And it's not like it's everybody's like, oh, we're all planning on this. This is what is keeping the common man unfree. And many don't even realize that they are a part of it. There's elected officials who think, well, what can government do today to help people? What can I do? Oh, and maybe it might help my friends too. But, there's also ones that whisper, oh, I better stop those do-gooders from implementing E-Verify. It'll ruin my industry. I mean, I don't hire illegals, but some folks do. And by golly, I'm going to go fight for them. So sure. Yeah. But that's the rigged mindset in action. So when real people show up with out-of-the-box fixes, simple things like mandatory E-Verify to clean up the workforce or property tax repeal to let folks own their homes outright, school choice to break the monopoly, they're called radical. Good. That's exactly what we need. Radicals for truth, for freedom, for dismantling the rig. Embrace the exposure of this rigged system, folks. It's being exposed. This isn't all new information that I'm covering here. This is like old stuff. This is like 2022, 2021, when we're during the pandemic, when everybody's looking at all of this stuff and questioning it. Because it truly is rigged from top to bottom. The benefit, it's all to benefit the few at your expense. So we need to help bring forth the answers. We need to support bills that cut the cords. We need to vote out the gatekeepers. We need to demand accountability. We've got the momentum, especially in Idaho, and so we need to use it. The system's not broken. It's working as designed, and it's time for us to redesign as intended. We need to stay vigilant. God bless us all, folks. God bless us all. All right. Now, let's see if these guys really are working to redesign the system. Brian Allman is with me this morning. Brian, it's nice to see you this morning, my friend. We have been watching these committees, watching the floor, watching all of these bills go through, wondering if they are going to help redesign the system. One of the things that we're trying to do, I know, is trying to protect our kids from all of this woke stuff that's happening in our schools, and that also is available on library shelves. And a couple of years ago, Idaho passed what we were all calling the library bill, which would hold libraries and librarians accountable if certain books would fall into the hands of children. I don't know if that's how it's turned out to be, but we're back this morning with a new bill to kind of shore up some of the edges on this bill. You're a library trustee. Can you help walk us through this a little bit?
Sure. Good to be here again, as always. House Bill 710 finally got through, as the governor called it, that stinking library bill that he had to sign, because people have, our conservatives have been trying to get something through for a while. It goes all the way back to the 1970s when obscenity laws were codified, and they carved out an exception for school teachers, librarians, museum curators, because they were worried about things like, Michelangelo's David or something being, prohibited from children. And of course, I don't know if they could have expected at the time that this would allow this creation of a whole industry dedicated toward pushing very obscene or at least inappropriate materials on children. There was, I wish I had it handy, but there was a tweet a few weeks ago from some LGBTQ activist who was responding to claims that we need to protect children from these things by saying, well, how will children know if they're gay or transgender if we don't expose them to these materials at a young age? And that's, they're saying the quiet part out loud there. So, we finally got House Bill 710 through, and that provided a mechanism for members of the community to come in and submit lists of books that they found in their public or school libraries that they believed were either inappropriate for children, in which case they need to be moved to a different section, or downright obscene under existing law, which means they need to be completely off the floor and not available to children. And I will say, as a library trustee, it does become difficult. When you're in committee hearings and looking at some of these obvious books, picture books, graphic novels with explicit imagery. Okay, that's easy stuff. But then you get these other books that are, okay, they don't have any pictures, but they have descriptions. And where do you draw the line on those descriptions of things that, I think most people would agree are inappropriate for children? Our library board in Eagle, we made the decision a couple of years ago now to move some books. We moved about 20 books from the children's section to the adult section because we felt that they were dealing with themes and using words and phrases and sentences that were not necessarily appropriate for children, but it would still be up to the adults, the parents, to decide if their children were old enough for those things. And we did take 3 books and, kind of leave a marker, a dummy book on the shelf, like you sometimes, used to see in the old video stores. And you can still check them out. For that,
but they're they're behind the shelf.
Yeah, well, the actual books were supposed to be moved to behind the office, behind the closed doors. For that, we were named as part of this lawsuit that publishers and other libraries in Idaho filed against the Attorney General in the state of Idaho and us because of that law. In the meantime, you have Representative Jaron Crane brought this new bill here to essentially just eliminate one sentence. So the original law, as it says now, nothing herein contained is intended to include or prescribe any matter which, when considered as a whole and in the context of in which it is used, possesses serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific value. And Representative Crane used, in his presentation, he used the example of the HBO miniseries John Adams, which is, a 6-8 hour miniseries about one of our founding fathers. It's pretty good. But there's one scene in there where it shows his adult daughter getting, surgery because she has breast cancer. And, you can see the body parts in question. And he used that as an example of something that within, would, in the context of the whole would be considered artistic or political or scientific or literary. The new bill just takes out the phrase in the context in which it is used. And my perspective on that, just speaking for myself, not as a trustee and not as somebody with behind the scenes knowledge of the bill drafting, is that I've seen that phrase be used as kind of a get out of jail free card for people who want to keep things on the children's bookshelves that really shouldn't be there. They're saying, oh, well, it's only one little scene in the context of this great book that's on the bestseller list and the publishers love and the people are checking out all the time. So we can't take it off the shelf because of that, because it's all about the context. So I watched a part of the hearing, and all the library bureaucrats and lobbyists were very much against the bill, which suggests that it's probably a good idea.
Yeah, well, let's watch. You explained well what the what this new law does, or what this cleanup bill does. Let's watch the exchange between Representative Hawes and one of the representatives for the bill as well. Let's watch this.
How did I know?
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for being here, Mr. Zarian. So to be clear, what I understood you're saying, and so you can confirm for us, is that the law of the land is still as stated in Miller, but that's up on appeal, and the Ninth Circuit has decided as this bill has been edited.
Mr. Zarian.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Hawes, the Ninth Circuit's opinion upheld the law in many respects. In one respect, with particular respect to in the context in which it was used, it found that gave too much discretion to the context, to the specific minor, to the setting in which the book is being given, not necessarily the context within the work that it is being used. The language taken as a whole still considers the entire work, literary work or motion picture, whatever it may be. So Miller still is the law of the land. That's correct. It's slightly different as adapted to minors, as the Texas Supreme Court, or as the Supreme Court in the Texas case recently reiterated. But yes, that Miller is still the law of the land.
Follow up?
Yes, thank you. So what would happen if we change our law and then the Supreme Court doesn't overturn Miller? Will we have to come back here and revise this because this law will be in conflict with the Supreme Court's Miller test?
Mr. Zarian.
Mr. Chairman and Representative Hawes, no, this law is not in conflict with a Miller. It actually almost tracks verbatim what the Supreme Court has said recently, and which is tracking Miller verbatim. So this law is not in conflict with Miller.
Follow up?
Follow up. The Miller test does include the context in which it's used, though, correct?
Mr. Zarian.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Hawes, I don't believe it does, and that was one of the reasons why the Ninth Circuit did not like that language. In the context in which it's used, I don't believe appears in Miller.
I'll have to go back and check that, but thank you.
Okay, well, nice little sparring there back and forth between the two lawyers. Well, I mean, the bill passed committee, so it'll move on, and I guess we'll keep tabs on how this debate keeps going. I mean, all in all, as a parent, as a member of the community, and so forth, I mean, the whole point here is we're just trying to protect children from all this, extreme graphic stuff that has been allowed to seep into their material at such a young age. That's
for sure. And something that I think, if you just listen to the Democrats and the library lobbyists talk, they act like the very act of taking a book off the shelf is censorship. When, in this day and age, you can go on Amazon and buy almost any book. The real banned books are the real controversial ones are the ones you only find from private collections that are $1,000 on Amazon. If books are not banned, if you can get them in the front table at Barnes and Noble, or you can get them on Amazon at any time. And remember, libraries, Eagle Library is fairly small. It's one building. We only have one location. There's no separate rooms. It's just a very small space. So our staff and we as the board overseeing them have to make decisions about what goes on those shelves. And so making those decisions, it's not censorship to say, well, this book is a little inappropriate. Let's take it off and put something that's more appropriate in its place because we have very finite shelf space. You listen to some of these folks and you'd think that was a complete violation of the First Amendment of children, of publishers, of everyone, which I think is pretty absurd.
Yeah, and also, I mean, as somebody who's used the library, if the library doesn't have the book, you go online, you request it, and they get the book for you. Like, you're a parent. Parents can check out any book they want. If they want their kids to have these books, all they have to do is request them. I mean, you can go online. I mean, you're probably part of a library network that can share books around the valley or whatever. I mean, we do the same thing up here. You log in. Oh, that book's over in Shoshone. They'll have it shipped here. It'll be here in 2 days, and then you can come pick it up. I mean, what's the big deal? I know we all know what the big deal is. We all know what the big deal is. It's like it's the same thing. It's like when they say, "Oh, we want to save the turtles to ban plastic straws," and you're like, "No," and you put up a huge fight over plastic straws, and they're like, "Why is the plastic straw so important to you?" And it's like, no, it's not the plastic straw. It's your control attitude and the idea that you want to corrupt our kids here.
Right. They're pushing these things on our children in our schools and in our libraries. And then when we stand up and say no, suddenly we're the ones politicizing it. But that's not the case. They're making everything political and then trying to call us out when we stand up and actually say no. We're going to protect our children from these things.
Exactly. Okay. We do have a representative that we've asked to join us. I'm not quite sure if they'll make it off the floor. Are they still on the floor?
Yeah, the House is still on the floor, although
okay,
maybe they're wrapping up here.
Okay, well, we'll keep going. Here. We have. I wanted to get into the JFAC stuff here. There were some interesting things that are happening, and it goes with kind of like the theme that I was trying to open up at the top here, which was like we have to redesign the system somehow. And so, where do we start? We're starting with the Redmond proposal. Is that where we're going? I don't have my rundown in front of me here. I lost everything. It was a disaster right before the show. But let's start with the Redmond presentation here on this Rural Hospital Oversight Committee. Watch this.
And committee, for the record, my name is Jordan Redmond, representing District 3 in Kootenai County. Today I bring before the committee House Bill 862. This bill would set up an Idaho Rural Health Transformation Fund as well as an Idaho Rural Health Transformation Committee. A little background on where this came from. So during the One Big Beautiful Bill, there was a number of Medicaid reforms that were put into that, saving over $1 trillion over time for the Medicaid population. And with that, to get some other senators on board to pass the One Beautiful Bill, they set up the Rural Transformation Program. That program was $50 billion that would be sent to each state. Each state could send in an application to apply for those funds, and then it was distributed throughout the different states. Idaho. So this is all happening in the interim. During that time, our Department of Health and Welfare submitted an application to the federal government, and we received just shy of $1 billion over the next 5 years. So that's kind of where we're at. During the interim, I know that the Senate and the House were looking at setting up an interim committee to kind of work on this, help with the application and figure some of that out. That never came to fruition. And so when we got back into session, both House and Senate leadership said, hey, we want to have some legislative oversight under these funds. We would rather than the executive branch and the Department of Health and Welfare being appropriating and distributing these funds, we wanted to have some oversight. And so that's why I bring this bill to you today. Again, this is an oversight committee for better stewardship. And again, I think that's our legislative responsibility to oversee this. And with that, I would stand for any questions.
All right, and there were questions. Let's dive into that first question there from Representative Thompson.
Representative Redmond, this is more directly to the amount of money and what are we going to be doing with this? It has a 5-year sunset, basically, where the money's going to run out. Mm-hmm. What's going to happen to the programs that are started with this money when the money's gone? It's like ARPA 2.0. We've got a lot of programs that we're trying to have to figure out how to continue with unsustainable funds.
Representative Redmond. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Representative Thompson. I think that's why this committee is so crucial, because sustainability needs to be built into the immediate framework. I don't think any grants should be approved that don't have long-term sustainability. We know these are one-time dollars, and we don't want to repeat what happened with the ARPA funding. And so we want to make sure that they have a plan, a procedure in place, so they know that. And a lot of these grants will be one-time grants in general. They're not going to be ongoing from multiple years too. So we want to see that framework on how are you going to have this be sustainable on its own, because this is essentially a grant to get you started, but you better be able to show that that can be carried on throughout the process.
All right. Good questions there, and some good answers too. If we're going to do this, we have to make sure it's going to be sustainable. To me, that always reads like more tax dollars, but perhaps there's another way to generate this. Representative Levitt also, Brian, has had a question on this issue. Let's listen to that, and then we'll get your take.
And my other question is, what would happen if we didn't pass this today?
Representative Redmond.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Representative Levitt. If we did not pass this today, then essentially the executive branch, the Department of Health and Welfare, would just move forward with submitting out these grants.
Follow up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is this something that's written into statute? What gives the governor and what gives the Department of Health and Welfare the ability to move forward without the legislative purview for appropriating the money?
Representative Redmond.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Representative Levitt. So those funds are currently in JFAC now, and so they would still have to appropriate the funds, correct? But if JFAC decided not to appropriate the funds, then again, that's a different piece of legislation, right? That's a different body than this is. This is setting up an oversight committee so that if they do appropriate those funds, we will have some legislative oversight of that and not allow the executive branch and the Department of Health and Welfare to determine where they think those best fit.
Okay, so there we have it. That's exactly kind of like what we're dialed in here, what we're talking about here, Brian. What do you think?
Well, while the clip was playing, I was trying to look at there's a Senate version of the bill and a House version of the bill, and they're very similar, although it looks like the real difference is in who gets to make up this committee that has oversight over it, because both...
Who are the kingmakers? Who gets to be king, right?
Well, right now, the governor is the king because it was passed out of the One Big Beautiful Bill, and the governor and his agencies submitted the request for the application for the grant, and they got it. So the question is, there's two questions here. First, should the state take the money at all? It's already been accepted. However, as Representative Redmond said, it's still up to JFAC to appropriate the money because it needs to be appropriated. That's our Constitution. Even if it's federal money, the JFAC still has to say, okay, we're going to take it and move it. But we've seen numerous examples of fights over that issue. Second question is, if they do choose to appropriate it, who gets to oversee it, make sure it goes to the right places, have information on what it's actually doing, have reports on whether or not it's actually accomplishing what it's meant to accomplish, and what kind of committee should that be? How does the legislature stay involved and maintain its function as the body that really is the closest to the people, rather than the governor and an entire bureaucracy full of unelected bureaucrats managing that as well. So it's a big issue, and I know the Senate bill came out very early, and the House bill, I had heard rumors that was going to wait until the very end. So I think this debate is going to dominate the last few weeks of the session.
I would think so. So did I miss it? Did you tell me the two different, who gets to appoint whether between the two different bills are?
I hadn't quite gotten to that.
Oh, you hadn't. Okay, fair enough. Didn't mean to do that. All right. Well, we'll find that out and figure out which one we're here. I would presume that the good senator or the good representative here, Redmond, is carrying the better of the two bills. That's usually how it goes. Okay, so that brings us to this other question, though. Like, what happens when the federal money is no longer there? This seems to be a question that's happening a lot, folks. So this was a question that was also asked by. Is that our next clip? Is this the flow we wanted to go in with with Senator Ziderveld, Senator Glenita Ziderveld and JFAC just this morning, raising an issue with what happens when the federal money disappears. Watch this.
Senator Ziderveld.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just for a comment.
Right,
I just want to bring to our attention, because this has been a concern of mine, when we're so dependent on the federal, and this is a perfect example of what happens, is they start decreasing their responsibility, and the state has to increase their responsibility. And as far as the state goes, we don't have that kind of revenue to keep losing that. And so this is one of the reasons why I am so leery of voting for anything with federal dollars, because eventually we have to figure out how the state's going to pay for that, and we just don't have that kind of money. So I just wanted to make that comment. Thank you.
Yeah, and then let's just go right into a bill that Representative Tanner had presented. Let's watch this.
I'm here this morning to ask you to introduce RS 33682, which is a joint memorial. This memorial recognizes that due to the U.S. Supreme Court decision, Plyler versus Doe, 1982, that no public school may deny enrollment to any student based on immigration status. Consequently, the Plyler decision requires that Idaho schools bear the cost of educating the children of non-qualified aliens, yet the federal government does not cover the full cost to do so. In short, because of Plyler, the federal government has mandated that Idaho and every state bear the full cost of a federal policy, yet without federal assistance. The Plyler decision is effectively an unfunded mandate. The Plyler decision costs Idaho taxpayers money due to a federal policy while not reimbursing them and estimating anywhere between $112 to over $220 million annually. This memorial simply asks the federal government to recognize this imposition and to perform a study to determine the full cost of educating the children of non-qualified aliens and then make them whole. And with that, I stand for questions.
So there you have it. Is everybody seeing the picture here, right? Here's the picture. The federal government says, hey, take this money, use it for this purposes, and then it dries away, and then the state is left holding the bag, and they look like the bad guy because they say, oh, we don't have the money for it anymore. And then you got the Democrats saying, well, people are going to die in the streets if we don't fund it. And then you've got all the other bleeding hearts around saying we have to do something. And so state grows government on its own. Is that how we have it here?
More or less. Remember yesterday when we talked about the per capita adjusted for inflation budget. If you just look at the general fund, it's fairly flat. But if you look at those federal funds, it goes up and then stays up. And that's what happened during COVID. We got those ARPA funds, and most of them, they were all supposed to be one-time uses. Here in my hometown of Eagle, they used it for a couple of projects to build up stuff because they had to. They had to use it or lose it, basically, once they got it. But I heard that throughout the state, other organizations, other schools, other municipalities, various government units took some money and used it for things that should be ongoing. For example, like teacher salaries. That's something that you have to keep paying every year. It's not a one-time project. So if the federal money you're using that for dries up, then suddenly you have to take state money to do it. And then that is just growing the state budget. So that's the worry here. And I very much understand that. That's if we start taking these rural health transformation funds, it's going to be used for things that once that federal money dries up after 5 years, then we're suddenly going to be holding the bag. It's I don't think it's too far off the mark to compare it to, I guess you could say a drug dealer gives you the first hit is free. And then once you're addicted, well, you got to come back and pay for more.
Oh, perfect. Absolutely perfect. All right. I don't want to bury Tanner's bill here under the guise of just talking about how, the issue of what you just said, because Tanner's bill is extremely important when dealing with having to fund illegal immigrants' children in school. That's a whole other issue, and that memorial should be going through if I read it correctly. Let's go back to the Senate and the House version of the bill that would have this oversight committee looking at the funds for this rural project. The House version, apparently, Brian, looks like the people who are appointed, who do the appointing, is the leader of the Senate and the leader of the House, the Speaker of the House. And then the Senate version includes the governor in that as well. Am I reading these two correctly?
Yeah, it looks like the House version, it's 4 from the House, 4 from the Senate, with 1 non-voting member by the governor. So the governor gets to have his say, but it's really the legislature that gets to make the decisions. Whereas the one from the Senate, it's got 2 members from the Senate, 2 from the House, and 2 non-voting members by the governor. So that's interesting. And in both cases, the governor's person doesn't actually get a vote, but they would have, I guess, more influence. And the House version would be more people from the legislature, which would give the legislature more influence over where these funds go, presumably.
Yeah, and it looks like the Senate version there is also saying it needs to have representation from basically a rural district. Which might or might not be as objective as a person that you'd want on that committee.
Right. You can make the argument both ways. You can say that we need rural representation since they're the ones who need these funds, presumably, and are going to be utilizing them. But then again, you don't want the foxes guarding the hen house here. You want to have some objectivity there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, like you said, we'll keep an eye on that as it moves forward. Let's dip over to the House if you can, guys. It looks like they're still in session. Usually they're done by at the top of the hour. We're about 9 minutes past the hour, and they are looking at Senate Concurrent Resolution 117. Let's take a listen.
In our area, it provides 1.24 million acre feet additional water. That's 10 to 15% additional water in a dry year. To give that some contrast, it saves the farmers millions by having cloud seeding. If they had to buy the water, it's close to $50 million a year if they had to buy the water, where it comes in at pennies to cloud seed. I personally have not seen any ill effects. I'm not saying anything about those that feel like they have, but cloud seeding's been going on for generations, literally. And our crops are yielding more every year. Everything is working, especially in a bad year. Cloud seeding becomes extremely important. We get phone calls on cloud seeding, and I listen to those people, but I've got to say that they see the airplanes and they see them out there cloud seeding. If their airplanes are cloud seeding, you don't see them. They're above the clouds. They're dropping silver iodine on those clouds. And so, there's a lot of things being said, but this is probably one of the safest, most economical ways to add water to our mountains in Idaho.
Okay, that's Representative Rod Furness debating seemingly in favor of this resolution, giving a shout out to cloud seeding. Brian, over in the Senate, was it today they voted on Senate Bill 1375, which would have been the health and welfare maintenance budget?
Yeah, Matt. So right before we went on the air, the Senate was debating this maintenance budget. Now, remember, the process works that they take last year's budgets essentially and send them forward as the maintenance budgets. It's divided into 10 decision units, they call it, and then the enhancements come later. That's what they want to add for the year. But this year they decided to slash 5%, the governor's 3% plus an additional 2% from most of the budgets, excepting some programs. This is Health and Human Services. It covers Department of Health and Welfare and a couple other smaller departments. And the total budget, we've got it right there.
Woo, look at those numbers, everybody. Look at those numbers.
$1 billion. It's I believe this is the largest single chunk of the total state budget. And you notice it cuts. It cuts about
Brian, slow down. You may notice it cuts. What should people be looking at? What column? Give us the XY axis here.
So the first column is what the things are. Second column is FTP. That's full-time personnel. I believe that's personnel. It's how many employees are
positions. Yeah.
Section positions. That's right. Sometimes it's FTE, full-time employees. General fund comes from Idaho's tax dollars, sales tax, income tax. Dedicated funds are certain fees that have specific uses. Federal funds are obviously from the federal government. You see a big chunk of this is federal funds. That's because of Medicaid and Medicaid expansion. Medicaid, regular Medicaid, the federal government chips in 66 or so percent, and Idaho has to cough up 34% of benefits payments, whereas with Medicaid expansion, the federal government pays 90%. However, that's still growing much faster than we were told.
So show us here the I think you might have to go full screen, guys. What is the where does it show what we're cutting and saving? Is it down in the bottom there?
Yeah, well, at the top you see the 3% recession and then the additional 1% that JFAC voted to cut, and then you do see the math there. At the very bottom, the final gray row, the fiscal year 2027 program maintenance is the actual numbers. And then right below that is the change from fiscal year 2026 original appropriation. So it's the change from last year's budget. And so you see, go all the way over to the right, all the way down, third from the bottom is $5.7 billion. That's a lot of money. And it does cut almost $287 million, which is a nice chunk, and that's good. However, it sounded like what the debate was coming from the floor is that you had the the more liberal Republicans and Democrats were worried that this was cutting too much, whereas the conservatives were saying it's not cutting enough. And so they essentially joined together to reject the bill, which puts JFAC in a bind because they've got to pass this. It's a constitutional duty to pass a balanced budget. And how are they going to get something through that cuts enough, but also doesn't cut as much as some people want? So it's going to be interesting to watch, and it means they could be here a little longer than they thought.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is the biggest budget, like you mentioned, that they're going to be looking at to cut in this sense. And so say it again. So you have the Democrats said you're cutting way too much, we vote no. Then you had the conservatives saying, hey, you didn't cut enough, we vote no. And now it's going back to JFAC. Who does JFAC listen to in this situation?
That's a good question. You have the emotional appeals coming from the left side of the aisle, where they say that people are dying because of budget cuts already and that this is going to cause people to die. And then you have conservatives saying that this, we can't afford it. We need to pull government back from these programs that really should be handled by private sector, private charity. These disincentives to work. It's like Medicaid expansion. People don't want to work full time because then they'll lose their benefits under Medicaid expansion. And then, of course, the concerns that we just talked about, that more and more federal money means we're getting more and more addicted to it. What if that 90-10 split for Medicaid expansion funds, what if the government changes that? What if the federal government says, we're $38.5 trillion in debt. This is unsustainable. So this Obamacare program, which, remember, it is an Obamacare program. It's only been around for about 15 years and only in Idaho for about 6 or 7 years. What if they say, well, we're going to make it 50-50 instead of 90-10? That means states are going to be required to find enough tax dollars to support a huge chunk of money. And they could really do that at any time. So we are tied, if you imagine the federal government's debt like a giant anchor pulling the country into the bottom of the sea, we're tied to that. By voting for Medicaid expansion in 2018, we tied a rope around that and tied the other end to our state. And so where the federal government goes, we go. And so, I very much understand and agree with the concerns that this is unsustainable.
Yeah, absolutely unsustainable. Okay. Let's see this. The House is still on, so we're not going to get our guest in today. It was going to be Representative Monks, the majority leader, who brought forth a bill, House Bill 645, which actually just passed the Senate committee. It passed the House already. It was over in the Senate side, and it's going to head to the Senate floor. And I wanted to talk about this bill because I wanted him to better explain it than I. And so why don't we do this? Let's take a short 1-minute break here. We'll grab that bill ourselves. We'll talk a little bit about it and see what happens in the House as they move on to through their third reading calendar. They're probably just going to work through lunch. They got a huge calendar, a lot of bills to go through. We'll also show you how many bills have already made it to the governor's desk. So let's take a short break. We'll be right back.
That's exactly what happened. You want to pull the tape? You can pull the tape because we now got video.
Idaho's Republican governor signed the bill to reduce her income tax rate, but Jim Guthrie voted against it. Our governor signed the Idaho Medical Freedom Act, but Jim Guthrie voted against it. Our governor signed the school choice bill, but Jim Guthrie voted against it. Our governor signed bills ending taxpayer-funded soda and junk food, removing DEI from our universities, and outlawing pride flags being flown on government property. And Senator Jim Guthrie voted against all of it. Who does Jim Guthrie really represent? Because it certainly isn't you.
Paid for by Citizens Alliance of Idaho.
The dictionary defines a pledge as something that you give as a sign that you'll keep a promise. As Idahoans, that's what we're looking for in our elected leaders. A sign that they'll keep their word. Talk is cheap, and so are political promises, hidden agendas, and special interests. This is why we created the Citizens Alliance of Idaho Pledge, affirming the values Idahoans have been living by for over 100 years, inspired by the only two documents everyone has agreed to live by. So when an Idaho legislator signs our pledge, inviting voters to publicly hold them accountable, that's what we call political integrity. The pledge restores trust and honesty between voters and their legislators. It means protecting our shared values and ensuring your voice is heard in Boise. And that is priceless. Thank your legislator for having the political courage to sign the Citizens Alliance of Idaho pledge. And if they haven't, it's time to ask why.
Matt Edwards, Brian Ullman here. We are looking at the floor. There looks like they're going to adjourn shortly here, but we want to talk about House Bill 645. I think this is kind of a game changer, Brian. I'm looking at this as somebody who has done a lot of independent contracting work and so forth. What does this bill do?
Well, this bill would allow people who are independent contractors to take advantage of the larger numbers that go along with employers. The way health insurance or retirement accounts or things work is that if you tried to just do it on your own, it's a very high price because you're just one person. But if you're a company with 100 people or 1,000 people, then you can get a good deal on these things and get it for less. So this portable benefits plan, reading about it there, it creates tax incentives and kind of smooths out the regulations so that a business that hires somebody as a contractor instead of an employee, they can come to an agreement where they both submit a little bit to a retirement account. So, like you, I've done a lot of independent contractor work. I'm doing it right now. And you could go and sign a contract to do some certain project for somebody. And also as part of that contract, you can agree that some of your compensation would be in the form of going to a tax sheltered retirement account, an IRA, Roth IRA, or however that would work. So it seems like an interesting concept. It is interesting. I don't know if we're going to have time to go into the full debate on the Senate side. I was in the room for it. There was opposition from the unions because they are very protective of the idea of having employees, because then if you're an employee, you can be part of a union, whereas contractors are ways that companies kind of get around having to work with unions. And there was opposition from the Democrats as well for fear that they didn't like the voluntary aspect, which was really interesting to me. They didn't like the fact that this could be just something that an employer and a contract worker could do of their own accord. It sounded to me like they wanted more regulation saying, oh, you have to do more.
Right. Yeah, well, I think it's a game changer, not just for retirement, but also for the health insurance aspect of it too. I mean, once again, it's like the only way that the system is set up is if you want a good health insurance plan, you got to find a good employer who's willing to pony up the dollars, and it costs them a certain amount of money to have you on their plan. But all of that stuff it goes into that system. So here's another way to say, hey, independent contractors and employers, here's another incentive to allow that. So yeah, I mean, no wonder the unions are against it or the Democrats are against it. I mean, this is just empowering the free market. It's empowering people to take control of their own lives. I mean, I think it's a game changer. So we'll continue to follow this bill as it goes on to the Senate floor. All right, folks, let's get you up to speed on the bills that have been signed by the governor. We are now, almost 3/4 of the way into the session. People expect us to be out of here. They always say, oh, the third week of March will be done. And it's usually like the second week of April. So, but it is an election year and they like to tidy things up sooner than later. But of course, like you said, with the failure of that health and welfare budget, there's a battle happening for this session right now. All right, I digress. Let's bring up this chart here. This is the list of bills. This is how many bills, folks, that the governor have signed, and it is 12. 12 bills. That have made it to the desk and that the governor has actually signed. Now, he might have more on his desk at the moment, but these are the ones that he has actually signed. So that being said, Brian, when you look at the amount of bills that are still being introduced today, we still had RSs that were presented yesterday and today. It just kind of makes you wonder, how will they ever get any of this stuff through in time?
Yeah, it's Like we talked about the other day with Senator Guthrie has his rule change proposal to limit the number of bills. I don't think that's the answer, but there's obviously something happening. I saw earlier a list of how many bills were introduced this year compared to last year compared to the year before, and it's been going up. It's you look back over the last 20 years and it goes up and it goes down, but we're seeing a significant spike over the last few years, just the number of bills that are introduced. And you could say, well, this is ridiculous, it's too much, but then, okay, which bills do you cut out? We all have our opinions on that. Some people will say, well, get rid of all those social policy bills. We don't need to be dealing with bathrooms, but apparently we do. Others would say, get rid of all that code cleanup stuff. Who needs that? Well, we should be cleaning up the code. So I don't know what the answer is. More staff for LSO. Should the legislature come in for more than 3 months? And now we start getting into that iffy area of being careful about going to a full-time legislature, which I know most everybody opposes. More staff to help them get through this faster. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean it's the big question, and it just seems to be that most people just want to just end it all, just stop it all. But like you said, there's so many different bills that come through. I mean, we're seeing a lot of what are called cleanup bills, or we messed up this language, or this was inadvertently left in, or we now see the ramifications. And so a lot of these bills aren't like big, bold new ideas. Many of them are just moving rules to code or code to rules, and moving striking language here and consolidating there. And look, I'm all for bills that deregulate and consolidate and make government more efficient. We do have that progress report that shows year over year where we are. The latest one came out March 6th. It's the link. I shared the link with you guys earlier this morning, and it shows in if you just go back 5 years, in 2021, the new legislation that was presented by March 6th was 690 bills, and now we're at 822. So there has been an increase in that. There it is. You can see it. And so you definitely do see an increase. And and like you said, I'm wondering, is that because we are making new laws and restricting the people, or are we actually trying to fix the system? This is what I talked about when I opened. It's like the only way to fix the system and redesign it is to get in there and change all of this stuff. And maybe that is going to require more bills to do it. And when you look at the people who push back on the amount of bills, it tends to be the ones like you said, like Jim Guthrie or the good old boys or the establishment who says, don't start messing with this system. But the system is rigged, Brian. It's absolutely rigged. And if the only way to dismantle this horrible, what we talked with Nicholas Kleinworth about this thing that was enacted in 2008, where the state government and the hospitals are making money off the federal taxpayer, right?
Yeah, and it's important to remember that the legislature is the body that is closest to the people. Every one of those 105 people represents about 52,000 people in their district. And the votes, the elections range from a total of sometimes just 2,000, 3,000 voters in some districts, all the way up to 10,000, 12,000, depending on the election year or how much attention it gets. So these are the people who are closest to you. These are the people who you can go to town halls and talk to. And the way our system is designed, the legislature is supposed to be really the preeminent branch of government because they are responsive to the people. Now, you can call up the governor's office and ask him to do something about some bureaucrat somewhere, but it's a very thick maze. It's a Gordian knot over there, whereas the legislature is the one that can go in and chip away at that knot and start untangling it. We just need to support them. We need to, and by that I mean we need to give them our input. We need to help them understand the things that they're looking at, and we need to be the ones holding them accountable.
Yeah, and I wish they had more tools available. I mean, there's folks. I'm gonna tout something here that wasn't expected, but there's a great program that sends interns to go help legislators at the Capitol. It's called Statesman's Youth, and I'm sure our producer is excited to bring up the website if he can, because this and the program's already underway. But here it is, Statesman's Youth. You could sponsor an entire intern if you want. It's a little, if you've got deep pockets, you can do that. Otherwise, you can donate however much you want, and you get an intern that goes to work with our fantastic legislators. They're a Christian-based organization, and they will match up an intern with one of our fantastic legislators down there to give them the help they need so that they can work harder for the people. Maybe not harder, they can work more efficient. It's not about working hard, it's working more efficient. And so yeah, you can apply for an internship. So if you're a parent or a grandparent out there and you're like, I need an opportunity for our young people to join, to learn, you get to learn about the you get to learn so much. You get to fellowship with the fellow interns and so forth and learn a lot more. In fact, we'll interview somebody about this in the coming weeks. So it just popped in my head as we were sitting here thinking about it. And of course, full disclosure, one of our producers runs that organization. So just a little tidbit there. Anyway,
if
ahead,
I could
Brian.
just add really quick to that, one
Yeah.
also great thing about something like that is that it creates a pipeline for people who understand how the system works. There's this organization at the national level, American Moment, that serves to bring interns in and prepare them to be staffers for congressmen and senators and the executive branch. And that's really, personnel is policy. So we need good conservative Christian people who are involved in the workings of government, because no matter what the legislature does, if the entire bureaucracy is filled with liberal activists, it's going to be hard to get good things done. So we need people who are willing to step up and be part of that. And starting as an intern for a legislator is a great place to start.
Yeah, 100%. Thank you for that, Brian. All right, where can people follow you, Brian?
At Brian Oman on X, I'm working on an article about Idaho child care subsidies, talking about breaking the system or fixing the system over at gemstatechronicle.com. So check it out.
All right, fantastic. We'll see you tomorrow for the big Friday end of the week show. Thanks again, brother. All right, folks, that's it for us. Thank you so much for tuning in. Wow, big numbers today. Really glad you all tuned in for this. That was exciting. So exciting. We have some voicemails backed up. We got to play some. 208-402-4915. You can leave us your voicemail, leave us your message, and we'll play your voice over the air and let everybody know what the issue is. Join us on YouTube. Join us all over the place. Rumble, X, Facebook, Instagram. We'll see you tomorrow, folks.
250 years of me and you. Yeah, lift it up loud. Idaho proud. American true. Church bells ring through the valley air. Rodeo lights, what a life we share. As to Perpetua, forever we'll sing. God, land, family. Let freedom ring. So raise that flag, let freedom fly. Echo liberty from plains to mountains high. America's heartbeats red, white, and blue. 250 years of me and you. Yeah, lift it up loud. Hey, Idaho proud. American true. Idaho proud. Red, white, and blue. Idaho proud. Red, white, and blue.
This bill, I think, it puts a stake in the ground that says we have a sovereign right to protect what's ours.